In the hospital the stay was very long, but now I'm recovering. At home I breathe hard, I tremble a little, I see blurry, I look around me. And despite all my minutes of silence I stand up thanks to what I experienced. In this hospital the door to my room was often open during the day. And across the hallway there was another door that was often closed. I have to talk about the person who was there in another room. Then there was this death on a day like any other. Whiteness, disheveled hair, thinness of the body. When no one is alive in the other room, it's the first night. But to speak of sleep would be to lie because it is a question of death. Me, back here, I can no longer listen to the demo that had been recorded before.
Well, you remember me, but how really?
My parents were not Canadian and I don't speak English very well. However, I must talk about doctors who often do not find the disease. When death approaches, these doctors rarely have the courage to announce the end. Only a chief of service should have the courage of a nurse. The other caregivers are amazing because of their indifference. Feeling is absolutely not a medical skill. Doctors don't tell the truth neither with masks nor with silences. It seems to them that it's better than to talk about suffering. For this reason I don't like doctors very much despite their own weakness. But the incurable patient is not fooled, and he hums a tune to them out of pity. Me, I'm a musician almost cured, but it's not a victory.
I know who you are. Remember, the past is dead too.
The consequences of misdiagnosis are often serious. No doctor believed the person who said breathing badly. But no regrets, because unnecessary care would have caused more suffering. Doctors love paradoxes, they give deadly cures. For them death is the disease they will never cure. Few patients resist the useless efforts of medicine. When a refusal of treatment takes place, the doctors are not happy. They are afraid despite their years of study and their hazing. It is not enough for them to improve life and not to avoid death in vain. A trip to the sea is better than a tube in the throat, to die at home too. But the thugs don't change. Their science will save their silent world.
You are alive, but you seem to no longer know it. I know it for you. You are alive, but you seem to no longer know it. I know it for you. You are alive, but you seem to no longer know it. I know it for you.
I'm remembering that sick face. I saw it coming in a wheelchair which a young nurse was pushing. Dead people are temporary living people. When we understand it, it goes rather less badly. I say these things but I am not already in the shoes of these victims. Everyone always dies, no matter how. I was always worried that my bedroom door would be closed without cause. And when that happened, it was the same with the other doors in the hallway. Only one door was opened. The service was briefly quiet. Then someone opened my door again. And everything went on as if nothing had happened, until the next time.
You haven't played the piano since returning to your almost empty house.
The room where the patient is alone, is for this one who don't have for long to live. And this patient rarely asks for the television to be turned on, he needs silence. Yet among people who are boring in a hospital room, physical therapist is among the most amazing. Because while his patient has only a few days to live, he moves the bones of his puppet to improve ridiculous comfort. Gives up only when he notices the artificial sleep of his prey. Then he doesn't bother to say goodbye, not even to the body. Because somewhere another body replaced the future corpse. When the bed sheet covers the face, he keeps busy elsewhere. And me, here now. I try to listen to my music but I stop it every time.
When you were a teenager, you played with something else. Was it a concertina?
In the end, the coffin is always the most painful thing. A last unnecessary and silent confinement before leaving. Then the maintenance staff remove the dust. The great doctors seemed to have forgotten about me. I wasn't complaining. Wanting to be a fool to become an ostracized being. And thus to reveal what supposedly normal people are trying to hide. Subordinates can disappear without inconvenience. Since new people are constantly replacing them. Submission to rules is more astonishing, but it is explained by weariness. Rather than a politeness that is no longer in fashion. I will try to smile until the end as long as I am conscious. I want to die here at my place.
A Bandonian. Yes, that was it. It was a Bandonian, found in the attic.
With this haunting melody like silence, I play the game even in a very limited way. And I feel alive among the people who seem less close to death. I hold my mind in hell so I don't have to despair. But we mustn't have too much pain in body to reason like this. And the real sick have very different priorities. To suffer in order to live better, to progress, to prepare for death, is the grim opinion of those who are healthy. There is no use in pain except for false mystics. Because evil slows down thought, blurs feelings. Here there is no virtue, only constraints. We have to bear alone the silent isolation from suffering.
The Bandonian has the breath of a voice. It knows how to get deep. Do you remember?
While we are pursuing careers, there are those who are dying. How to continue hypocritically, to play a double game. To do what is expected of you by all the people who are doing the same thing. And how to remain vain enough in order not to stop everything. To have the courage to exist despite all the difficulties. Or the weakness of not giving up sooner. As long as we are still capable of something before the crash. This is the silent lesson of death that it would be rather worth repeating. But the mask is in place, that one or whatever. We hide dead people to make them acceptable to the eyes of those are living. We make up life to make it look like what would never end.
When are you going to decide to do what you want? Let down what you don't like.
At the hospital, I was learning nothing, so I had to be outside. Interpreting what we are living does not establish the meaning. A lot of things are already fixed, but we have to improvise a little. Knowing that there is no greater freedom with nothing except this world. And that there is no more choice with silent heaven above us. Suffering is no reason to stand up, sickness is no redemption. But I accept to be alive here, at home, even while always listening to the same music. I know I shouldn't repeat myself the way I do. Yet there is no other way to accept what is happening. Moreover, our projects help to live and allow us to forget about death. As well as the constraints that people call life in society.
You could play both instruments, that wouldn't be discordant, right?
I count the number of days in an existence at least for fun. Or only the years and not all because there are gaps in time. It is rather by unequal, unhappy, or happy durations that we live. Patients do not perceive time in a different way. But in silence they feel a digest of what everyone experiences. We should see the agony as in fear of the rhythm of things. When our own rhythm goes wrong with these things. As for the dead, they do not ask for anything from the living who make them talk. So I wake up, go through what I have to go through, and go back to sleep. For me the pain has never been strong enough to prevent sleep. Happiness is never low enough that I don't wake up, so I keep going.
When they told me you were a musician, I knew you shouldn't give up.
Short walks are more useful than long-distance running. Because seeing life as an effort is depressing and unnecessary. And this way of waiting for the constraints to lead you until the next day presents only disadvantages, whereas it is better to live now as every day. The other problems don't matter anymore. When the time comes for drugs that decrease the sensations, when I will have to die in my turn, I do not know what my courage will be. We show off ourselves, we make boast too, we assume that life will last a long time, and that the imminence of danger is not for tomorrow. We use the music to tell a story before the final silence. So I still close my eyes to listen, and my voice becomes less low again.
Every musical instrument with a keyboard is, for me, absolutely fascinating.
There are those stories that are refused because they are too intolerable. Violent stories are interesting when they are extraordinary. But we don't want to listen to them when they get too close to us. That this could happen as a pure guess is interesting. But the proximity must not become unbearable. The patient in bed has time for distant memories like those silent films.
whose memory keeps the first images and whose end is always forgotten. We have to get to the end of life, to say we've seen enough. But when there is nothing interesting to look at except a few faces, I prefer to close my eyes and try not to think for a few seconds. Or I dream that I play hopscotch on the ground floor of my house.
You care so little about music now, you talk and talk about what is unnecessary.
Courage is not what people think when they do bungee jumping. What is truly lived is a very different adventure. People who are afraid, listen to what is decided by a stranger who believes to be eternal. But the cemeteries are full of indispensable people. Now I know what's in the doctor's gaze on his patients. And if he's happy with what he knows, does, says. And how far does his sense of superiority go? Those who suffer in front of him are first of all objects. Yet it would be necessary to love a little to be able to help others. Me, I don't need a silent Lent to fast. Because the real dark nights take place without a single prayer.
Your voice seems to become deeper. Have you started to smoke again? Your voice seems to become deeper. Have you started to smoke again?
One shot and no more, that's what I would like, but the action repeats. It seems that a god would not have dared to invent death. One shot, fortunately life does not repeat. It lasts more or less long with chance which can stop everything. Then living people judge that death is premature. One life is enough time, but most are not satisfied. Young people scream, old people speak no longer. One time is enough. From life to death, the passage does not exist, it happens suddenly. Even if the process is the same from this birth which leads to the end. Existence is only a wait between the first awakening and the last sleep. Once again is always useless, like in these gala after parties.
And you're haunting music like an echo. Why are you still resisting?
The time to hide always comes too quickly. We have to hide the evidence that it always ends badly everywhere for everyone. There is little chance that there will be any changes. The age considered presentable has shrunk like a skin of sorrow. With this self-confident youth that shows itself to be older than its age. To have fun, to hear the heart beat, to lie as long as possible. Sometimes I wish life was just a word, a bad idea. What I say again doesn't interest those who pretend this is all wrong. I was locking in my body, no longer being able to leave it. And I was waiting for it to stop. I was smiling at those who were looking at me. But I won't die keeping my mouth shut, it seems I'm still artist.
And that cannabis smoke that makes your voice muffle. When will you stop?
Since I have been out of the hospital, the death toll has increased. Besides, none of this looks like anything. I want nothingness to be the only valid explanation for this madness. It is absolutely not useful to imagine somewhere a divine being who is responsible. Because men are stupid enough to invent their misfortunes. I completely trust each of us for this. Since everyone behaves the same, we shouldn't complain. My own conclusion is that being nothing would be good for the rest of my life. Then I would like to die suddenly, standing on my own two legs, but not on stage. Every time I try to listen to this music played on my piano, I have to stop it. Will I be able to continue, or do I have to do something else?
It is certain that you will be able to continue, doing something else or not.
To suicide is not a way of dying that I will follow. Because since a long time I gave up justifying what is happening. The hospital, the room, the bed, the seats, the table, the light. The sight often uninteresting, sometimes a river, a field, a forest. Some personal items, the bathroom, and this hallway. The entrance hall which spares us nothing. Neither the reception staff nor the broken elevators. The shop with basic toiletries. Also plush toys which will be companions in the grave. The scene is set but I'm not an actor, I'm barely an artist now. I do not know if I will re-record my demo made before my hospitalization.
You have to rework, no matter where, but you have to replay to be alive.
There are no possibilities to improvise in some places. But when we allow ourselves a little difference, people criticize the disorder introduced into the production. Now I prefer sets in empty places where nothing is happening. One day there was this death of the person across the hallway. So for a few hours there was no one in the room. Since the body was waiting in a fridge in the morgue, I would almost regret never knowing certain jobs. And I think of those that I have not watched until the end. Yet they came to hear me when I played my music, they applauded me. So I no longer count the victims for which I played on stage.
Do you really think that surviving in your house is better than living on stage again?
Now I know what's worth living for. For example, a presence offered to others. I can no longer believe that I have a special value. I know I'm useless even going back on stage to play music. No matter what happens, there is no need for a new awareness. I've seen how others die, so I must ignore death for myself. I must observe my body occasionally only. The strengths are to be found in oneself, and there is help from who loves you. Not being rude is a start, it's a kind of neutrality. Despite spectators who can be terrible. But when they become fragile, they are benevolent in front of our own efforts.
You, the musician, you start to tire me a little with all your daydreams. You know that?
To shut up because someone is going to play, maybe even just before he dies. Even in a show, life would look like a dirty joke. So back behind the scenes, you have to know what to do. How to think about the performance the next day. People can be obnoxious, it's entertainment. They even rant about the circumstances of the death of others. And they speak of morality rather than daring to show their powerlessness. Everyone has their say, of course, and me, I am content to live. When I notice what is being said around me, it doesn't touch me anymore since the moment I know. I know what I still have to do as musician.
You, the musician, you start to tire me a little with all your daydreams. You know that? When you will replay music, you will do it for yourself first, especially not for me.
Despite the spotlight, what I don't forget is what surrounds me. This strange comedy with its worst extravagances. However, I think less of my dead and the weather will be fine outside. I'm still an artist more or less as it should be. That's why you must not look at me too closely. I see the others, with their pretty makeup, their fake smiles. They always find the spectators they need to be watched. But in the long run their consistency would really amaze me. Because they're little secrets, I know better how to discover them. We're all a little too powdered, too painted. And this is true too when we only play music.
Are you really thinking about my suggestion to play something other than the piano?
In my house, I go up and down. It's going better, but sometimes I feel tired. Words are only human inventions. But they can kill like any living thing. On stage, words are more or less lucky. They can become a refuge for forgetting. Death itself would be a simple word, an idea without life, without love. There are also some pretty ideas that sound like swear words. For example, to love what is far away so as not to be concerned with what is near. Either way, men are always worse than their creations. Today I thought about the musical program that I will not play.
You don't know what to do with this musical order that bothers you. And now?
Sometimes I would like to kill these civilized humans with their disgusted looks. Warped by fear of what they will one day become. And it's for them too that I should play, I must say it again. This life is decidedly too short to bother with propriety. It is better not to go into detail and to eliminate what is too heavy. Especially if we can't protect ourselves from what is unnecessary. I shouldn't love others too much either, a long time should be enough. In fact, we mostly hate us because it's easy, loving is the exception. I am a civilized patient, an invention of the rich, a peculiarity of progress. Because the more our world grows, the more complicated it is to operate. In short, I know why I won't play my music like I used to.
I am right to be patient, you seem to be progressing. But what do you decide?
It is not appropriate to see evil as waste. On the contrary, it shows the degree of sophistication of our universe. Eyes are open as long as they can, they watch everything. This is often the only thing for the last memory. Me, my eyes still see a little blurry, but I can replay if I want. Risking my existence on stage rather than at home where I live like a loner. Life is not just a failed audition, a failed project. But the show is not what people imagine. What happens there is not always better than elsewhere. We have fun, we make noise, and at the same time the others die. Here, from the start, I've only been daydreaming, but this carpet will have to be cleaned.
By the way, if you play the bandoneon like an accordionist, choose the recorder.
In the theater, the setting can be beautiful. But there is always something wrong, a detail. All these performances are similar like those of a successful show, for which there would be no specific date for the last day. Artists also want to be eternal, even stars take drugs with this illusion. When we play, we show that we are doing better rather than bad. We show all that covers up the noises we refuse to hear. For example, the movement of blood in the neck. As we play music, there are people who are in pain. But fees will be paid, and that is what is important. So that I decide to play again soon on stage, my producer offers me a big fee.
A recorder, you would find the child you were, because I know you started like this.
I have often worked with dancers. We watch them dance and we want to be immortal. We believe in their movements as an illusion of eternity. A body that moves must first be beautiful to look at, even if it just wriggles with the music. And there are those pieces of glass in the slippers before they come on stage. We artists are pomaded the way the dead are made up, so that all the light shines on us, and it doesn't matter if I repeat myself. Moreover, I know that it's just looking at one side of things. Life is good until proven otherwise. It's a fireman's ball before the big fire. By the way, before I go on tour again, I need to improve my English.
Leave your cellar and go back to the attic. You can come back on stage there.
Everyone is there behind the scenes to take the stage. Sometimes we lend each other our masks before we start playing. But we are not sure if all this is really useful. For a moment everyone plays their own role, then steps through the stage doors just after the last performance. We know the show is not much different outside. Also we sniff the emotions of the spectators, them who have come to watch how we are doing inside. Because I have to lie, I prefer to do it in music and be well paid for that. And because we have to spend our existence restless. We might as well do it with some very real advantages, before going backstage.
You should fit out your cellar, your attic, and work from home if that's what you want.
Putting yourself forward, that's the big thing. This astonishing ambition has become so commonplace. The musicians do not do better but not worse than the others. And if we play the piano well, it's only our job. But the way we are on stage is always a little wrong. This is the rule, each new generation takes over. Anyway, no one seems to find it too boring. An event would make us change, it passes, and we think of something else. To make sense of all these stories, to increase or decrease an effect. To try to remain credible because everyone must believe in you. To the extent that everyone is waiting for you to believe in them.
Your world is still afraid of death. You lock yourself up and you no longer live.
Not all roles advance the action despite the number of lines. Laugh at that. Laugh at everything since the derisory and the absurd are universal. It could be maybe better than nothing anyway. So many stories go by with so many characters. Yet there remains the same fatigue with the same boredom. With this repetition of predictable scenes when the outcome is known at the start. When the action itself does not present the slightest surprise. We might only die laughing, but we take ourselves too seriously. Every day we have to come back, again and again, to the same questions. Every night we have to dream with the same hopes, regrets or remorse. We're sure to wake up because there is too much old music to play.
I won't talk to you anymore and I won't say it again. Stay alive thanks to the music.
We will have to leave the stage, but before we are ready to do anything to say hello. We don't necessarily want standing applause. We are satisfied to see that the spectators remain seated. After having repeated all this, the risk would be to continue for nothing. And I don't want to be a musician clown anymore, before the final curtain. Leaving this hospital was a bit disturbing. But by staying there was the risk of becoming transparent. Now here I breathe more calmly, above all I no longer see blurry. You know I always dreamed of being able to play in my attic. So I won't play the piano anymore, but I want to play what I want. Then I'll go see the sea in Tofino, to know how to listen silence.